This is a video in the series deploying with Clarive. In this video we will deploy a WAR file to a Tomcat server. We will build and deploy the WAR file. In development, the Tomcat server will reside in a Docker container. In QA it resides on an Amazon instance, and in production it resides on a server on premise. We will deploy here in that video the WAR file to development and to QA, and once it gets into the status ready for deployment to production, we will deploy it to production in another video together with a .NET application, with a mainframe cobol application, and we will deploy that as a release with a single job coming from a single pipeline. In all of these videos that we will just do this in a consistent way. We will use in all of the deployment videos that we are registering, we will do that with the same pipeline. So whether it's a WAR, it's .NET, it's mainframe, we will have videos on Android, we will have videos on iOS deploying to the App Store. All of this is done with the same pipeline, which gives you a consistent way of deploying. So here in front of me my index file on the Tomcat server, and I'm gonna make a change to that particular index file. As a developer, I just go into my IDE and I make a change to that index file. Let's say for video purposes, just making a small change, saving it. And after saving it, I will just commit it to my repository. I'm using here Git repository, but it could be any repository. So this is the revision of the 4th, for instance, and just commit that one as developer. And by committing that as a developer, going into Clarive, you'll see that in Clarive I have a Changeset. A Changeset to deploy the WAR files together with .NET and mainframe cobol. And the Changeset is what we deploy in Clarive. So these are deployable topics. Currently that Changeset has no revisions available, but since I committed and I refresh that view, you will see that Clarive has found that Changeset, has added the revision to that Changeset, and has also started a job. So you see here that there is a job running for that particular WAR file to build it and deploy it to the Tomcat server. We can follow that job by going to the full log and see what it's doing. And besides building and deploying, we can also execute additional tasks in the deployment job. Like for instance, here we will execute our static quality analysis tool. In my case, here it's Sonar. That will be executed during my deployment. So refreshing that, so you see here that it has done static quality analysis. I can go here and see within Clarive which is the result of my run that I just did. You can see that it passed, it's okay, it's a status quo compared to previous statuses. It's got a direct link to the dashboard of Sonar itself. So that's data that we captured and that is made available to the user. So the job continues then, and it has now built with Maven, it has created the Docker instance that it wants to deploy to. That's the URL it's going to deploy to, and it has made a backup of the previous version that was currently in development of that WAR file. So it will continue now and it will deploy, which is it has done here. It has deployed. We can see the result of that deployment just by clicking here. You see that I have here for video purposes, that is exactly what I had added. And we validate now the deployment, and we here another example of other tools that we can invoke during deployment. This is executing gmeter, and the results of gmeter, we can check them also. We have here a link to it, so we get to the dashboard of gmeter to see how the job has done. after deployment we ran the performance testing, and we can see the results here. And by now my deployment is finished, so my complete job is finished. My Changeset, when I look into it, I had my repository with my revision. When I look now, I will also have a line that says, well, this is deployed to dev on a Docker platform. This is the URL to check, so that's what I stored here, and it's currently active. Now I can do some manual testing if necessary, and I can move this on to ready for QA. And by changing the status in the workflow that we have for Changesets to ready for QA, I get the possibility to create a new job to promote my WAR file to QA. So by doing that, I get a panel which will ask me for a pipeline. The main complete pipeline is the pipeline that we will use in all of our deployments, and it gives me also a date and time so I can create and start that job. And that job is now running, and it will deploy my WAR file to my QA environment. So here you can see that it's running. Also, when I selected here the new job, I got a panel to select my pipeline, but also I got here a date and time for deployment. And this date and time, I can change it to what I want it to be for deployment. I could set it to next week, which doesn't make more sense, or I could set it to tomorrow. And when I look here for tomorrow, it says 21 hours, so 9 hours in the evening. And why does it come up with that time, and why can't I select any earlier time? That's because for our deployments we use calendars, and these calendars are set up for the environment you're deploying to. So quality assurance, you see here, Friday you can't deploy between midnight and 9 in the evening. It's blocked. And all the other days it's free, you can deploy at any time, except on Wednesday, where we only accept emergency deployments, urgent deployments, special deployments with special authority. But for the rest, you can deploy at any day, and Friday is the exception. So when we get into that new job panel, we just look at the environment you're deploying to. We look at the application you are deploying. We look at the service you're deploying, because we can have calendars for each of them. We mix and match all of these calendars and propose your time to deploy that you can change within the limitations of the time slots that are defined in the calendar. In the meantime, my job for QA has probably finished. So let's refresh that screen. And here you see that it has finished, it has deployed. When I look into my Changeset that was ready for QA, due to a successful deployment, it has changed the status to in QA. And now I will do my QA testing, and I will move it on to ready for deployment once this is done, and this is the last step before going to production. But as I said in the beginning, we are not going to deploy the Changeset individually to production. We're going to do that with the release. So that Changeset here is related to release, and that release has multiple Changesets. So when I refresh that view here, you'll see that my release for my banking web, that's the WAR file, is currently ready for deployment. And my .NET application is also ready for deployment, but my mainframe application is still in development, which means that I will have to wait for it to become ready for deployment. Once it gets ready for deployment, we will deploy the release with a single job coming from the same pipeline into the production environment. And this will be shown in another video that will be made available soon. Thank you.